Welcome to episode number 7. Here we are. This is what we're doing today. So I put up a little, I suppose, poll during the week to figure out, well, it was a poll yesterday, in fact, to figure out what you guys might like to see. So I had 2 topics in mind, one of which was, of course, Amaro, which you will know for us in terms of Økar. And the other one was Tiki drinks, which is a personal, I suppose, love of mine in many ways, shapes and forms, because they're wonderful when it comes to actually drinking. So yeah, I was looking at that poll earlier today, and I realized that you guys all voted for Amaro. So Amaro is what we're doing. But I've got a little bit of a surprise. There's a couple things that are going to be going on. First of all, too bad you're getting both. You're getting both Amaro and Tiki. So opposites do actually work, and we are going to explore that later on. And second of all, you will notice I am already drinking. So this is an Økar Spritz, which is super easy to do. Take 45 mils of Økar, 60 ml of Cappy mineral water, and mix them together in a glass, top it with ice, and then some lemon and some lemon thyme, and it's absolutely delicious. Now, I've also started working on using this platform in a much better way. So you will have to forgive me if I can't see comments. So please, just someone comment, say hello, so I know if I can. That would be amazing. And we're also live streaming on Instagram today. So that's pretty awesome. So Amaro, I mean, where do we begin in terms of Amaro? Well, we begin really back in the Dark Ages. Again, as is the same with pretty much all liqueurs, especially Amaro, because any kind of Amaro. Oh, hello, Sarah. Fantastic. Cool. Well, I can see what everyone's saying then, so that is awesome to hear. Please, if you have any questions about Amaro while we're going, please feel free to ask. Feel free to say hello, and feel free to shout out where you're watching from, because it's really cool for me to kind of know. So look, in terms of Amaro, yeah, we're heading back into the Dark Ages, because I mean, really, herbal liqueurs and Amaros kind of populate the same family in many ways. So, of course, you know, there are things like Chartreuse, which is from, first written recipe was 1605. You've got a whole host of different other herbal liqueurs, including gentian, as we've spoken about before, especially like absinthe or wormwood cocktails as well. Sorry, wormwood. Eating dinner, so we'll be quiet for a while. Awesome, Stuart. No, Clover Club being enjoyed. Paula, nailed it. What a drink. Well done. So yeah, in terms of Amaro, what we're looking at, and the basis for Amaro and most Amaros that you'll find, is especially because of the, I suppose, the renaissance of wine, of course. Everything kind of comes from wine, especially in Europe. We distilled grape juice, my God, 2,000 years ago. It was the first actual written record with the Greeks of using alembics, and especially with the Arabs, and a lot of their fights and cross-pollination of culture. That was often where we'd actually have grape distillate from. And in fact, the term alembic, hello, Katerina. Good to see you again. Hello. How are you? I hope you're doing well. We're going to be heading through, so that's going to be fun. So, yeah, in terms of we'd have grape distillate, and then what would happen is we'd often, as a perfuming technique, we'd add herbs, spices. But because we weren't very good back in, the year 2000, the year 0, sorry, because we weren't very good with actually making that safe and making it edible, what would usually happen is we'd use them for perfumes. So for perfumery actually started in terms of this idea of where herbal liqueurs come from, or where Amaro comes from. It really starts at that bedrock of herbal liqueurs and also perfumes. So from there, of course, obviously monks were the main source of information regarding maceration of distillate and looking through what different distillates would do, and also making medicine. So when we're starting to talk about Amaro, we fundamentally have to include medicine in the mix. And the simple reason for that is for the monk, like the Carthusian monks of Chartreuse, you know, they were making medicine for a long, long time. Same with wormwood. Like it's always got a sense of medicinality to it. And of course, gentian was known for a long time in medicinal circles for providing, I suppose, relief from some of the catastrophes, I guess, of life. You know, really good for like jaundice, really good for pain relief. And of course it's good for pain relief because it's like 60% alcohol. And it's like, you give it to your mum, and your mum's like, oh, I hurt, I cannot walk. And you like give her some absinthe, and it's just like, it's a miracle, it work, I can walk now. And it actually, she's hammered. You've just made your mum hammered. That was really the secret to most of those medicines back then. So in terms of modern Amaro, which is really where like the story of Økar begins, it would begin with modern Amaro, and that kind of really starts, I suppose in the 1700s in Italy, fundamentally. So again, a lot of the Roman Catholic monasteries had moved into Italy, and they've also been sharing a whole bunch of information with the French, the Germans, who've been making their style of Amaro or their style of Kirsch liquors for a long time. And so when they started to translate this into what was happening, especially up north in the Alpine regions, so through Piedmonte, Milan, then down into the southern regions through Lombardy and Sicily, they all started sharing information and started macerating herbs for medicinal purposes throughout the 16 and 1700s. And then really came the, I suppose, through the 1700s, the renaissance of distillation. So we moved from just being able to make really brutal alcohol to being able to, with the mechanized world, make something that was far more palatable, distinct, and interesting. And we were actually able, with column stills, with different pot stills, with refineries about alembic stills and different accoutrement that you put on those stills, you can make a better base alcohol out of the grapes. And the French fundamentally were the ones who made this possible. The French were really the first people to make sure that their grapes could actually be distilled in a really pleasant manner, so hence cognac and armagnac. So when we start talking about the Italians, in terms of what they can do, I mean, they did some seriously darn good stuff. So after this kind of makes the best Negroni in the world, I mean, 100%, I tell you, if we're talking about Økar, it certainly does make the best Negroni in the world, but we are going to be doing an Økar drink later, which will be really, really cool, which is actually where I think Økar shines. And that's kind of tied into the Tiki theme that we will be getting into. And obviously, it's just me tonight. So you have to listen. Well, you don't have to listen, of course, but you get to listen to me talking. And as I said, if you have any questions about anything, like please send it on through. I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. So really what we start to see in terms of modern Amaro. And so, well, let me start by saying Amaro translates specifically to the word bitter in Italian. There are many different styles of bitter aperitivo or digestive that are all over Europe. So all over France, all over Germany. There's a few obviously in Croatia, in Serbia, in the Eastern Bloc as well. And Greece, I mean, that's where ouzo comes from. It is a digestive or an aperitif. So what you'll often find is that they're actually in families. So you kind of start with your medium-bodied Amaro. And funnily enough, what happens with medium-bodied Amaro is they're actually the most popular, funnily enough. So like heavy Amaro, vermouth Amaro tend not to catch on. So really, the most popular Amari in the world are obviously Aperol and Campari. And when we start talking about Aperol, I mean, it's actually Aperol's relatively new, funnily enough. I mean, they started distilling in 1919 and actually making Aperol. So all of the Italians came home from the First World War because they were involved sporadically. And so they started making Aperol, which is actually made from gentian and cinchona. And cinchona you'll probably have heard of, especially when it comes to the gin world, because cinchona, it's also called cinchona as well. Cinchona, I think I'm pronouncing that right, but cinchona is the way I've been taught to pronounce it. But essentially, that is where you're going to get quinine from. So we're actually really familiar with quinine in the gin world, and this is where like Amaro and gin actually fundamentally mesh together, because they are both macerations, distillates, and sometimes in the world of Amaro and sometimes in the world of gin, we age them as well. So when it actually comes to cinchona or cinchona, that's where you're getting most of your quinine from. So back in the 1700s, there was actually a gentleman, and this is so cool. There was a gentleman who was an astronomer, and they traveled to Peru, and Peru is and South America is where they were getting most of their cinchona from. That was being transported through Spanish routes into Spain and into Italy and into France as well, and into continental Europe. So the cinchona that they were getting was first described by an astronomer. I do believe I've written his name down. It was Charles Marie de la Condamine. So he's actually Charles Marie de la Condamine in 1735, funnily enough. That's a piece of trivia that you can use in your next game of Trivial Pursuit when they're like, so Charles de la Marie, I've forgotten his name already. In 1735, what did he describe? He actually described the first cinchona plant in a scientific journal, and he called it the fever tree, because what they used cinchona for, especially in South America, was to because of the quinine, they would use it to stop the fever of malaria. Boom! And it all makes sense again. That's the whole thing. So he described it as the fever tree because they would scrape off the bark, turn it into a tonic, and that is where our tonic water comes from in terms of the quinine attribute of the tonic water. Having a crack at a Genever sour, as recommended by Isabel. Peter, awesome. Please, photos or it did not happen, as Brendan always says. I seriously want to see that when that is done. If you have the ability to do it, I want to see it. A Genever sour, that's going to be dope, man. So yeah, cinchona was this brilliant little tree bark that they were using. And so Fever Tree, and obviously you guys will know the brand of tonic water, Fever Tree, that's where the inspiration of it comes from. So Aperol is made of fundamentally those three different ingredients, plus obviously a whole bunch of, can't put photos up, dude. Nah, fair enough. Yeah, that kind of sucks. I'm sorry about that. That makes me feel bad. Anyway, look, enjoy your Genever sour. Tell me what it tastes like when it is done. I'd be really excited to see what it tastes like. So Aperol is made of gentian, rhubarb, and cinchona. And so, which is kind of weird because I would never have expected it to actually include rhubarb, but fundamentally it does, which is for me like super, super cool. And then Campari, which is made from Chinoro, of course, and also Cascarilla. And so that's definitely the heavier of the two. So that was first made, my God, in like 1860 by the Campari family. So it was Gaspare Campari who first made it in I've got to go never eat soggy Weet-Bix, just west of Milan. Was where he first made Campari. So those two, in terms of medium-bodied Amaro, are like the cornerstone of Amaro in the Western canon of drinks, because of course Aperol has made the Aperol Spritz, and that is of course why it's gotten so famous, because that lady with a blue tick decided that it would be famous, and then Campari, of course, so famous with A, the Spagliato, which is one of my favorite drinks, B, the Americano, the thing that it actually became famous for, and then, which is Campari, Vermouth, and Soda. The Spagliato is Campari, Vermouth, and Prosecco, and then the Negroni, of course, which is, I suppose, every single bartender's favorite cocktail of all time. Like, if you ever go into a bar and talk to a bartender, they will undoubtedly say, as one of their drinks of choice, it's a Negroni, of course. So, that brings us to the kind of next stage of Amaro in terms of where we go from here, and that would be Fernets. So Fernet Branca, of course, or as Michael Caine said in Batman, I sit down there with my glass of Fernet Branca, which I laugh at every single time he says that. It's in The Dark Knight when he's like, sometimes, Master Bruce, and he's like, and then they're talking, and then he's like, what, Alfred? And he's like, sometimes I think about myself down on the riverbanks, having a Fernet Branca. And I'm like, it's Fernet, dude. It's Fernet Branca. Sorry, it's one of those things. So Fernet, which is pretty epic, and it was made famous by a whole bunch of San Francisco bartenders who started with the Fernet coins. So that was made first by Bernardo Branca in Milan in, again, the mid-1800s. I think it was 1868. It started. Thank you very much. That was my Michael Caine impression. Thank you, Brooke, for just laughing at it. And it was kind of an obscure reference, so thank you. So those bartenders kind of took it worldwide, and Fernet, it's quite mentholy. We've got a bit of mint in there as well. Are there any rules of how to store Amaro in the home bar? Look, it's going to depend on your actual alcohol level. So with something like Aperol, it sits at 11%, unless you drink it in Germany, where it sits at 15%. Weirdly, it's actually to avoid some taxation laws that fall upon liquors under, I think at 14% and under. I think it's designed for German wine and excise laws. So they actually, Aperol deliberately produced their spirit at 15% just for Germany, just to avoid those excise laws. When it's sitting at low ABV, store it in the fridge. Just the same, I would treat it exactly the same as you would a red wine, because you're going to run into a whole bunch of different problems if you keep it at low ABV, which we found out the hard way. Like in terms of Økar, when we first started producing it, we seriously found out the hard way about storing Amaro and storing drinks at lower temperatures. Hopefully, Peter, I'm just going to have a look at this. Came out well, you start with your amaretto sour recipe. Equal parts Genever, lemon strong sugar. No, you're right. Genever does not have the same intense flavor as amaretto at all. They're completely different families, but I'm glad you like it, man. I'm glad that's awesome. I haven't used Genever as much as I'd like to, simply because it's such an obscure spirit. It's not such an obscure spirit, but it's a bit of an obscure spirit, and it's not my personal favorite thing to use. It's not my, number one tool. So yeah, in terms of storing Amaro, like when we first started making Økar, it became problematic really, really quickly, because we had them at low ABVs, and funnily enough, some of the bottles started going through secondary ferment while they were in the bottles. We had them like explode. We had them explode on back bars and stuff. It's all good, Peter. You don't have to send me pictures. It's all fine. I trust you. It sounds fantastic. But yeah, so that would be my recommendation for storing Amaro. Check your ABV and then get it going from there. So we've got Fernets in terms of another style of Amaro that's used. So we've got 27 different herbs. Fernet kind of has this massive following amongst bartenders, and there are tons of classic cocktails that actually go along with Fernet, like Hanky Panky, which is gin, sweet vermouth, and Fernet. I do believe in equal parts, but it's been a while since I've made a Hanky Panky. It's not a very commonly asked for drink. And there's a few others as well. So there's like Fernet Old Fashions that you can make too, and it's a really, really interesting distillate that way. And then we've got Alpines, which kind of fall into the same realm as Fernet. We have Tartufos, which are made from black truffle. They're actually made down south in Italy, and there are a few producers that just make their Amaro from the core of it is of course is truffle, which is so weird, and they're incredibly fragrant, like unreal in terms of their fragrance. Then there's sorry, I've written down these words because they are in Italian and I have trouble saying them. Carciofo, which are artichoke Amaros. So that we have different families of what the core of the maceration is. So Carciofo is going to be artichoke. Thank you, my man. Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that. It's been a long time since I've had someone walk up to me and be like, "Oh, have a hanky-panky, thanks." I've been like, whoa. It was like 3.5 years ago I made one. Anyway, carciofo, so artichoke Amaros. You might see carciofo on a pizza menu, funnily enough. So they're always going to be like Cina. Cina is a great example of an artichoke Amaro. So that was, made in the 1950s, funnily enough. And that's got 13 different herbs and plants. Is that where the idea of Maiden Eye Nocturne came from? Most likely, I'd say. Although I would probably have to speak to the guys from Maiden Eye. I'd have to speak to Sean, and I would love to have Sean on. And hopefully I'll be able to get Sean on, and we can talk about all of the Maiden Eye products. And we can actually even deep dive probably a little bit more. But he'd be like such a great guy to talk to in terms of vermouth. So we definitely want to do a vermouth masterclass and talk about vermouth, because it will be awesome. But we'll get there. We will hopefully get him in, and hopefully he'll be here to talk about vermouth, and he'll be able to answer all of your questions. And then there's rababaro, which is rhubarb. So often they'll use rhubarb, and there's rababaro zucca, and zucca is actually the name of a cafe in Milan. So it's Cafe Zucca, and that's where the Amaro comes from. In terms of that particular one, that's from again, it's from the 1800s. That particular Amaro as well. So those are like the particular families. So we've got medium-bodied Fernets. We have vermouths as well, and then there's Tartufos. There's artichoke Amaros, and there's rhubarb Amaros. So they all kind of sit in this different family. And so like a good example of an Alpine Amaro would be something like Braulio. So again, they take like 26 different herbs from around where they are, and then air dry them, and then what they do is, sorry, pardon me. They air dry them, and then what they do is they macerate them into liquid and then age the distillate for 2 years. So there is a little bit of aging that goes on in terms of different Amaros, which is super, super interesting, because you get these wonderful oak complexities that come through. So in terms of Økar, which is probably one of my favorites of all time, we went for everything that was Australian native, because just like all of the Amaros across Italy, they all actually have a sense of terroir and a sense of place. And they've always used products that are around them and products that are native to them. So we wanted to go for something that was purely Australian native as well, and talk about our culture in a more, I suppose, grounded manner. And so that's exactly what we've done in terms of like ribery, in terms of Davidson Plum, Wild Thyme. We've macerated a whole bunch of fantastic Australian natives into some great distillate. So we've followed actually quite I suppose, traditional recipe in terms of how we've gone about making it, but we've also kind of given it this new bent. And so really, really good in soda, really good in spritzers. But this kind of leads me to the next part of what we are going to talk about this evening. So when we're talking about Økar and like how to use Amaro, a lot of recipes are done in this more old world style. So we've got, things like Aperol, things like Campari, things like Amaro Montenegro as well, which is, again, one of my personal favorites. But they're always they always have this sense of old world. They're very demure, they're very restrained, they're all about balance with all of the local flavors that are there, and usually they'll mellow them out with oak, which is fantastic, but it's not necessarily something that I suppose is native to Australia. Like, there's no species of Quercus that are actually native to Australia, so I mean, it's a bit problematic for us to use oak, I guess. In order to age an Amaro or to make like a reserve Økar, which would be a really cool idea to be like Økar Reserver, but who knows? So in terms of Økar, the way we actually like to balance it out is using oak, but from a different source. We usually like to use whiskey, rum, maybe reposado tequila with Økar. I actually think is the best way to use it. Or another great way to use Økar and Amaro in general, and again, we will touch on this later on Saturday. We are going to cook with some Amaro again, but here's a Martha Stewart moment for you. I actually cooked with some Økar this afternoon. So, great pal Tom from the Woods of Windsor. If you ever went to Trinket, you might have seen him. Unfortunately, everything is shut down, so Tom wasn't able to join me today. I was hoping he would come in and show us this recipe, but Tom put together this recipe of rum balls. Instead of using rum, he used Økar, and I followed his recipe today, and this is what I've made, and it's like I'm unveiling a child. So what we've got here is we've got Scotch fingers that I blitzed real good. I've got dark chocolate with a little bit of sea salt as well that we melted down and then poured in with some cream and sugar. And then we've added some Amaro to it, about 100 mils. I'll post the recipe at the bottom of this video so you can do it yourself at home. They're super tasty. And then we dust them with a little bit of cocoa and wattle seed. And then we've got some aniseed myrtle leaves as garnish. Peter, has anyone tried wooding drinks with any Australian timbers? Yes, they have. There are a few distilleries that have tried with Jarrah, which is a very singular wood. This particular distillery in question did a single malt whiskey in Jarrah. It is, as I said, very singular. It kind of tastes like a sweet bushfire. Did it work? I mean, it depends what your view of work is. I mean, this is where it becomes like incredibly subjective, because things like whiskey, I mean, we're always using American oak, French oak, Spanish oak, European oak, and they've got very different chemical compounds that are in them, as opposed to something like Jarrah, which is very singular. And that's the I suppose the main issue when we come to like confronting Australian flavors, when we start to use, yeah, well, you know, when I tasted it, yeah, I thought it was pretty incredible too. We'll see what happens with that distillery and their project. I'm obviously sworn to secrecy in terms of who it is and what it is and when it's coming out. Well, not what it is, because I've just told you, but we'll see what happens when it comes out, because it looks so exciting in terms of what that distillery is doing. But yeah, it's a very interesting wood to use. There are a few other native species of wood that you can use. Using eucalyptus is really problematic because it becomes highly toxic, unfortunately, if you use too much. And I mean, but that hasn't stopped a few producers, especially in the world of Apera, so Australian sherry, because what those guys would do is, I mean, those casks are like from the Wild West. Like, you'll find casks that are like 80 years old, right? The casks themselves are 80 years old. They've held 2 rounds of Pedro Jimenez or Palomino grapes that have that they've been sitting in there for like 40 years each, and the wood is just like inundated. It's a freaking sponge, right? And they've had like leaks in these casks. The casks aren't even fully wood. They've had some staves which are red gum and stuff like that. It's just like they're unreal. They're absolutely insane in terms of what those Opera coopers have done with like using Australian native woods and anything that they had, just like shoving a stave in there that is made from a wood that isn't very good for you. It becomes quite toxic quite quickly, unfortunately, in large amounts. Like, so you wouldn't make a cask out of a eucalypt. It's just not a great idea. Anyway, I'm going to dig into one of these Amaro balls, and as I said, I will put the recipe up after this, but I haven't actually tasted the ball yet, so... Oh, yeah. I bet if I open my mouth or smile right now, it's going to look like I just ate a piece of fecal matter, but... Tom, if you are watching, if you watch this in future, that is heavenly. Everyone at home needs to try this recipe. That was unreal. That was absolutely unreal. Oh, huge. Alrighty, cool. So yeah, we're going to cook with some Amaro on Saturday as well. It won't be our Australian Amaro. We're going to do some cured fish with it, so we'll show you how to make cured fish. Thank you, Tom. Yes. Oh, hello, Tom. How you doing, man? That was unreal. You get 1,000,000 bonus points for the rest of your life. That was sensational. So now we're going to do a pretty fantastic drink. But before I start talking about that, we're going to talk about one of my favorite loves of all time. We are going to talk about Tiki. That's right. I've just taken you from the middle of Europe, talking about Amaro, talking about the 1850s, and now I'm going to take you to 1933. Yeah, the balls, and they could be adapted really, really easily, Matt. And Tom, yes, they're incredible. The recipe sounds pretty easy. Yes, it is absolutely super easy, but I'll give you Tom's measurements and I'll give you his method. So you'll be able to just, you know, not have to think, which I really enjoy doing. I really enjoy not thinking. Personally, it's a real it's a real love of mine, just like not thinking about anything. It's great. And as you can probably tell, I do it very often. So we're going to talk about Tiki, guys. Where did Tiki come from? What in the hell is Tiki? You've probably walked into a Tiki bar several times and just been like, ah, cool, smells like rum, bartenders are in tropical t-shirts. What is going on? Like, this is a weird place. I like the drinks. I've had 3. I'm hammered. And that was kind of the point. So realistically, I mean, Tiki really started with a guy who was born in 1907 called Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant. That's right, Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant was the man who actually started the most incredible movement in cocktail history. So he was an American, started traveling around. Well, this is where it gets like a bit skeptical and a little bit, I suppose, contentious, because this gentleman would like travel around, well, apparently would travel around, because he said that he was in like, you know, French Polynesia, and then he was down in Australia for a bit, and he took a cruise liner down into the Pacific and learned all about these like wonderful flavors that were around, and all this kind of stuff. But then no one in America believed him, and for quite good reason, because he wasn't very trustworthy in many ways, shapes, and forms. He had like 3 wives. Not to say that that's not a reason to trust you, but he wasn't like a very trustworthy guy, and he just kind of got wasted all the time. So in 1933, he came back from French Polynesia, according to him. However, historians definitely debate that, and he opened a bar in Hollywood called Don the Beachcomber. And this is really where the whole movement of Tiki took on a thing of its own, because what he did at Don the Beachcomber is he didn't have any spirits on the back bar. What I mean by that is he didn't have any spirits that were labeled on the back bar. So he was very secretive, Ernest was, which is super ironic. He was super secretive, and so like all of his rums would just have numbers on them, which is super strange. And so all of his bartenders were given these bottles with numbers on them, and they'd be like, cool, what's this? And he's like, that's rum number 1, or that's rum number 3. And so he would tell the guys the recipes in terms of like, you'd put in 45 mils of rum number 1, 20 mils of Amaro number 4, and 30 mils of this triple sec, blah, 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 right? And that's how he'd go about it. So he was insane. And then there were a whole bunch of other guys during the movement who started just doing crazy things. Like they'd all start lying about everything. But anyway, I will get back to that because tiki is just such an instrumental part of like my upbringing as a bartender. But I want to show you this drink because I haven't actually made you a drink yet. And look, my God, we're like 36 minutes in. So this drink is a twist on a jungle bird. Now, a jungle bird was actually made super recently in 1973. It was made as part of the welcome drink that you would get if you went to the Kuala Lumpur Hilton. And it was actually made by Jeffrey Ong, is the name of the bartender. It was actually made famous in the 80s by a bartender there, but it wasn't actually talked about until that time. So usually a jungle bird is dark rum, Campari, pineapple juice, and lime. And while that's great and everything, the combination doesn't exactly work. Like, it's not my favorite combination of all time. So what we've got here is we've got some Lord Byron Distillery dark spiced rum. Now, Lord Byron Distillery, they're distilling up in Byron, clearly, but they're all about sustainability. Go check them out on the website. They're distilling rum up there. And while their rum ages, they've actually imported this rum from Central America, which is actually... I know, right? I know, it's like, come on, mate, like, hurry it up. You've told me all about this Amaro. I mean, get it done. So we've got 45 mil of this dark rum in there, which is actually from Central America, but you are supporting an Australian company. We've then got 25 mil of Økar Amaro in there as well. And see, this is where I think Økar actually comes into its own, right? Because you want that combination of all of these vivacious, insane flavors, plus oak, which is actually the thing that we're kind of missing in some ways, shapes and forms, because it's not technically Australian. Then we've got 15 mils of Økar. Beautiful. And the Økar that I'm using is El Guapo Økar, which is a gorgeous little Økar that I got from the Bitters Lab, of course, because they're amazing. Then we need 15 mil of lime juice. So we're just going to pop it in here. We're going to measure out our lime. Now, usually, old bartender secret, half a citrus, whether it's lemon or a lime, equates to 15 mil, or half the nip. So what you actually need, which is pretty dope. Then we've got 45 mil. So remember when you poured in a little, if you're making this, I'm going to presume that you are all making this with me. You put in 45 mil worth of rum. We need 45 mils. We need equal parts of pineapple juice. So this is just the mixed stuff that you get at the supermarket. Super easy. On my second Clover Club with Jimmy Carlisle, dude, you ate the perfect garnish of knowledge and passion with any applewood, but get on with it. Yeah, mate, it's so true. I'm so sorry. Awesome. So we've got all of our ingredients in there. So we've got 45 mil pineapple, 45 mil dark rum, 25 mil of our Økar Amaro. We've got 15 lime and 15 Økar. Now we're going to give it a big old shake. Just give me 2 seconds. Whoa. Nice. And here we go. Mate, me too. I love that rum as well. Awesome. So, what the pineapple juice will do is it'll slightly emulsify which means that we get this really great foam on the top of everything. And so, yeah, this is our personal twist on a jungle bird. And then we're going to garnish it with a lovely little piece of lemon myrtle. Hello. So usually we'd serve this in a coupette, but unfortunately I don't have a coupette at home. So I was hoping, Tom, you would bring one on, which, you know, so do deliverable cocktail kits for the final video. That is such a good idea, Sarah. And we'll make it. That's such a good idea. Let's definitely get that going, 100%. So, as I always say, treat your leaves like they've been a bit naughty. Give it a good spank. And then for this drink, just because of the way we've done it, we'll do a little seed on the edge for our lemon myrtle. Or not. No, we're just going to pop it in the glass. Easy. Cool. So then it sits in there like that. Obviously with a coupette, it'll lie on the top. Yes, we need to make that happen. Oh. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. The Amaro sits in there, gives it this wonderful berry characteristic. Campari itself will be too bitter, first of all. Chinotto doesn't actually work with oak. Funnily enough, it's actually already too dark itself, so it becomes this kind of run-down, heavy drink, which it doesn't need to be, funnily enough. So that is perfect because you've got these juicy rye berries up front. The lemon myrtle gives you a ton of citrus on the nose. The dark rum itself, I mean, boy, oh boy, snaps to Byron Bay, baby. Snaps to Byron Bay, because that is a serious freaking rum. So well done to you guys. Please visit their website if you're a big rum lover, because that's huge. It's actually, I tasted the rum for the first time this afternoon, and it blew me away. And I'm a massive rum lover. Like, I've been following rum since like iFlat and Foursquare and like Destino, and I'm a mad fan of Velia for all my rum nerds out there. But yeah, far out. That is a baller cocktail. So please make that one at home. If you're unfamiliar with the specs, we've actually got it on the Økar website. But again, I will link it at the bottom of this live stream so you can see it for yourselves on Facebook, of course. Now, here, this brings me to my next drink. Please send packs now so we can make drinks every night. That's what I'm talking. Well, whew, Emma, we're talking about some serious logistics there. That would be pretty insane. But Brendan, if you're watching, I mean, I'm sure we can do that. We'd just have to price it out for everyone. That would be awesome though, if we can make drinks every night together. That would be sick. But like, what you guys need to do is obviously just go away and buy everything that I'm showing you, so that then, you know, you can make it all yourselves. That's a joke. So our next cocktail, one of my tiki favorites, for the simple reason that whenever anyone talks about tiki, they're always talking about rum. Like, everyone is like, oh, rum this, rum that, I love rum. And I'm like, yeah, cool, I love rum as well. But we're talking like on a gin show right now. Like, we are, like, fundamentally, yes, this is a gin show. We did talk about Amaro for like way too long, my bad. We did, and that's totally true. But now I want to talk about gin, because I tell you what, yeah, rum might be the king of tiki, but gin is definitely the queen of tiki, if you know what I'm saying. Right? So Singapore Sling is probably the drink that everyone knows, and yes, everyone loves, and yeah, it's cool. But the Saturn, now that's a drink that I bet some of you actually don't know, because the Saturn is wicked. First made in 1967. The next time you go to a tiki bar, when all of this blows over, we are going to have Saturns together, because they are absolutely incredible. So, last night, I made a cocktail with the rye berry gin, and tonight, I'm going to make a cocktail with the rye berry gin again, because I'm not going to lie, I cannot get enough of it. Just saw in your bio that you went to a performing arts academy. It all makes sense now. Yeah, that's fair enough. That's probably the most fair enough thing that's ever been said. Saturn, as in the planet Saturn. It's not satin. I'm sorry about that. And yeah, we can make a gin zombie for sure. So the zombie is one of those classic cocktails by Don the Beachcomber. So he actually came up with the zombie. That was his first real drink out of Don the Beachcomber. And by the way, Ernest Raymond Beaumont actually changed his name to Don Beach after that. So yeah, he's a bit of a cool guy. The impressions and accents are the stars of the show. Thank you, Kerry. I'll keep working on my different ones. I did Bernie Sanders for my mum earlier this week before I was like, can't see you again. So I'll keep working on my American politician ones. So, you know, if you guys are into that kind of thing. And look, if you have any impression challenges, I will go for that. Point of the story. Stop distracting me, right? So, it wouldn't be tiki without a blender. And part of me hates the fact that I'm about to do this, but part of me loves it. So a Saturn, as in the planet, is the name of this particular cocktail. So the Saturn, first made in 1967, it appears on a couple different menus throughout New York still today, is pretty darn good. So it was kind of made re-famous, I suppose, by Jerry Beachbum, I do believe. So he's like the next man that's come out of the Don Beach, I suppose, extravaganza. So it's a beautiful combination of gin and also passion fruit, which is probably one of my favorites. So we're going to grab some ryeberry gin, and what we're going to do is we're going to pour 45 ml of this into our blender right here. So you just take, it's just a blend and dump cocktail as well. So it's a really good cocktail for like parties because it's just super, super simple. And we're going to pop it into our rocks glass right here. So 45 ml of our ryeberry gin. So we actually have a cocktail from the ryeberry gin, which is on the back of the bottle, which is the Applewood Passion Fruit Collins. And this was kind of the inspiration to use the ryeberry gin. We then got 15 ml worth of Auger as well, which is, I've already measured these out, so I don't really need to measure them again. So 15 ml of Auger. Then we've got 10 ml of Falernum. So Falernum is like it's kind of like an Auger, but with way more lime. So it's kind of a lime almond syrup that's been combined. And then we've got another 10 ml of passion fruit puree. And this is where it gets a bit contentious. So again, with the nature and the history of tiki, there's so many secrets and so much secrecy and like changes of cocktails and also like another bar called Trader Vic, which came out of Victor, I've forgotten his last name. I wrote it down again. It was Victor Bergeron. Victor Bergeron and Don Beach actually had a fight over who made the Mai Tai. Like, they all think that they're the guys who actually made the real drink. So this part of the recipe changes a little bit, whether it's like passion fruit puree or passion fruit syrup. So it'll change from bar to bar, and that can be slightly frustrating because it means you go to one bar, it's great. You go to another bar, it's different, it's not so great. So I've done a passion fruit syrup technically, but with a little bit of the pulp still involved. So you just add sugar to your passion fruit pulp, a little bit of water, dilute it down, stir it down, dissolve the sugar. Done. So we got 10 ml of that. Just pop that bad boy in there. There we go. It's fantastic for mouthfeel. Yeah, so like puree or pulp, as Izzy just asked, it's like, I don't know. And that's one of these beautiful things about tiki bartending. There are so many iterations and so many different ideas that come forward out of tiki, which none of it can be confirmed. Because funnily enough, like the guys who made it were liars, and the guys who were the students of them also weren't given the truth. So it's this whole game of Chinese whispers of bartending when it comes to tiki cocktail, which is super mad. Anyway, the last ingredient is 15 ml of lemon, or half a lemon, which we're going to just pop straight in there. Because the other cool thing about tiki is that because I suppose the fathers of Tiki lied, the ingredients, you can fudge them. And I know that's a terrible thing for me to say as like a really intense and very, I suppose, dedicated bartender, but also I know what's up. Anyway, so now we're gonna add some loose ice to this. So give me 2 seconds. Here we go. It's loose ice time. Oh. Now I'm just gonna use the rest of my loose ice in here because it calls for a bit of dilution, this drink. Awesome. And now we are gonna blend. Oh man. This feels so wrong. This feels so wrong. Okay, here we go. So, we're gonna pop it on our blender, and I'm really sorry for everyone's ears. Awesome. So you just need around 10 seconds. That was probably around 8 to 10 seconds. I think, I can't count, in your blender. So that's the way to go. Here we go. Oh, yes. Oh, it just smells delicious as well. Here we go. So I'm going to use, even though the recipe, again, it calls for shredded ice and different variations of ice and stuff like that. It's just too hard. So I'm just going to use 1 large ice cube as the ice cube for this. Here we go. So 1 large ice cube. Just pop it in there. And then, because we blended up all this ice into kind of this sick-as frappe, we're just going to pour it right over the drink. There we go. And that is the way to go. I know, not the blender. I can feel some of my bosses who have put time and effort into who I am, just going you bastard. Oh, I know. That's my girlfriend Anna. Who's the sneaky stranger behind me? Thank you. Yeah. She's laughing and having a cigarette. So here we go. This is the guy in question. Now, in terms of garnish for this drink, again, it's a little bit problematic because, again, don't really know what the garnish should be because there's so many different garnishes. A lot of garnishes call for maraschino cherry. I'll say hello when she gets back in. A lot of garnishes call for maraschino cherry. A lot of garnishes will call for lime zest. So what I've decided to do is instead go for a bit native because we've used ribery and I wanted to include something that was quintessentially tiki. Oh, Stu, we're going for a garnish, my man. We're going for a garnish. I wanted to include something that was quintessentially tiki. Now, I'm sure you guys have been to a tiki bar before and you've had a zombie, right? And what they've done is they've taken the squeezed out lime and they've put the absinthe on it and then they've lit it on fire and you've looked at it and they've looked at you and they've been yeah, be impressed. And you've said it's fire. And you've shared that fantastic time. So aniseed myrtle for me to get that little licorice essence is going to be the way to go because we've got passion fruit, we've got falernum, we've got orgeat, so we've got these wonderful citrites in there with passion fruit, which is so much fun and just it's zesty. And then we've got some nuttiness from the orgeat coming through. So I figured just a little bit of anise. And again, got to treat them naughty. Oh, because I've got 2 leaves. That's why I hit it twice. I've got 2 leaves. Just going to set it down on the rim there. Just like that. Oh, just something nice and simple. That'll give flaming passion fruits. Flaming passion fruits. But this is, see, Sarah, this is what I love about tiki bartending, right? Because it's you can never get it wrong. It's flaming passion fruits. Yes, let's do it. It's so vivacious and sometimes silly and maybe a little bit kitsch. And definitely was through the 70s, 80s and 90s. No one was doing tiki. They sprinkle the cinnamon over it for some flair. That's the way to go. Yeah, because the cinnamon like kind of acts as like a spark maker essentially. And that's why they use cinnamon, and it also just like lights on fire and spreads sparks and all that jazz. And it's all about like making a show and being a bit kitsch. But here we go, guys. Cheers. Here is a Saturn. Oh. Get on out of here. Get on out of here with that. Oh, so it's so citric, elegant, but it's so refreshingly light. Like, if you haven't tried a Saturn before, again, I'll link the recipe below, because that's a belter. Like, do away with your margaritas at parties and do in with a little bit of Saturns. That is sensational. It's almost as big and awesome as the planet, but the planet kind of pips it at the post, unfortunately. Yeah, that's real good. Well, now I have 2 cocktails. I suppose one is going to Anna, and the other will go to me, I guess, at the end of all these things. But yeah, those are the 2 cocktails. I'm sorry I went on so long about Amaro. I freaking love Amaro, and I also freaking love Tiki. So they're two elements of bartending and tools, which I find super exciting. And I obviously didn't deep dive into Tiki because I went on and on and on about Campari and Aperol for a long time, and I am sorry about that. But since I've got like 4 minutes, I'll tell you about some really exciting things that we've got coming up. First of all, first things first, our next gin is being released this Friday on the Applewood website. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but let me give you a clue. It's very grassy. It's gardenial. That's what we've gone with for this one. It's going to be so exciting. I'm really stoked for it. We're going to have a ton of fun releasing this one. And when it comes in, I'll grab the bottle out. We'll do a bit of a tasting, hopefully with me and a few others, which will be really, really exciting. And we'll see what everyone's point of view is. We'll see if we like it. We'll see what we don't like about it, and we'll pick it apart for you. We'll do a bit of a tasting party, and then we'll probably try it in some cocktails as well, because why not? And we'll probably try it in a martini and a G&T as well, because that's the way to go. Second thing that is happening, it's been confirmed today, and you need to tell all your friends, tell your wife, tell someone else's wife. It's a whole lot more fun if you don't get caught. What you need to do is you head to the Applewood website, right? You sign up to our mailing list, and then you go into the running to win one of 1,000 individually bottled martinis, which we are dubbing quarantinis. They are 50-50, our navy juice plus an experimental vermouth that we've put together ourselves. So we will be punching those out the door. They come in the same size bottle as these ones that I've got here with a little wax seal. So you go into the running to win one of those, and they're $10 each at the end of all things, which literally just covers our postage to send it to you. So if you are in quarantine, head on to our website, sign up to our mailing list. Katarina, I'm going to check on that for you, because if you are already on the mailing list, I think there can be something that is done. I know, right? I know. I'm already signed up as well, all right? I don't get quarantinis. I don't get any quarantinis, which is frustrating. But yeah, so that's going to be going out as well. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys will be able to sign up again. But it's also like, sign your friends up and tell everyone, let's get them going, which would be really, really cool in terms of the quarantinis themselves. And yeah, so those are the 2 things that we have in the pipeline at the moment, which I'm super excited about. And yeah, guys, if you have any requests for what you'd like me to cover in the upcoming episodes, please let me know. Tomorrow night, we're going to be running a little bit later. So we're going to be, I think, going live at around Sorry, pardon me. We're going to be going live at around 9 p.m. I know it's a long time to wait, but I've also got to wait as well because we've got the guys from Land of Plenty, which is a fantastic little place in St Kilda. Yes, that's the way, Paul. Let's do it. Unsubscribe and then subscribe again, man. Just use a different email address. That's the way to go. 100%. Tomorrow night, we've got the guys from Land of Plenty, Stacey from Land of Plenty. We're going to be broadcasting live from there at around 9 after those guys are done with their Deliveroo schedule. They've got some awesome burgers. They're all about championing native botanicals and native foods. And we're really, really lucky. We've got Blake Hall, brand ambassador from Patient Wolf Distilling Co. And we're going to be doing a bit of a cocktail off. I'm pretty sure that's what we've set up at the moment. So that's going to be really, really exciting. So join me then for another episode of this really quite interesting time that I'm having, this like strange discovery journey that I'm going on with you guys. So thank you so much for joining me again. Join me tomorrow for episode 8, which I'm sure we'll dub with a very stupid and also funny name. So thank you guys. Have a sensational evening.